Well, yesterday is over. The Boston Bruins made a ton of signings. I did a couple videos, but I wanted to do a wrap up because supposedly they're bringing the juice next year. I'm going to talk about all this in the latest video from Bruins Diehards. So buckle up, Bruins fans. I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. If you've been liking my Bruins content, please leave me a like and subscribe. If you've already done so, thank you, and let's get into it. So yesterday was Canada Day for me. It was also free agent day. And the Boston Bruins, after coming out of a stellar draft where we thought the new era is here and the Boston Bruins are going to do something different, they kind of went off the board a little bit on a couple of things. I actually do, after taking a look at everything and processing it in my brain, think some of the moves weren't that bad. You know, there's some, and I know there's some that we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to really talk about in length on one of them because I did a whole video on it. There's been a lot said on it, and it seems to be a polarizing topic right now, and definitely talking about Tanner Jeannot. But I think there are some good moves that he made yesterday, but I also think at the same rate, there wasn't much out there. So there wasn't anything that they could do with regards to the top six, besides the trade they made for Arvidsson. They could have done a lot more trades. That's what Sweeney pretty much said he was going to do at the draft. Before the draft, he kept talking about his trades. And then we see them go out and sign a bunch of players yesterday. They were one of the most active teams in the NHL. They started off the day with just over $12 million in cap, and the end of the day with just over $2 million in cap. They spent a ton of money, and in a little part of my brain thinks, imagine if they still had Brad Marchand, they wouldn't have been able to spend all this money. I also do think that the Bruins definitely were hoping Brock Besser would have been available, and that's a guy they would have pursued. He ends up re-signing in Vancouver. That actually ended up being the theme of yesterday. A lot of these big ticket UFAs ended up re-signing with their team. Granlund actually signed a pretty good deal over in Anaheim. I didn't think the Bruins even had a chance on him. The Bruins ended up taking a chance, but my biggest issue is going into free agent day yesterday is if you're going to spend the money, you don't have to. First off, you don't have to spend the money. So if you're going to go out and do it, your urgency was right side defense, or at least some more defense help, but definitely on the right side, and scoring. Now, to start off with Arvidsson, I guess he adds scoring. My only biggest concern with him is he's been injured over the years. And then when you see the Edmonton Oilers fan base all over social media pretty much happy that we took him, and yes, they didn't retain, on any of it, and the Boston Bruins take him in. My hope is Marco Sturm is right. Don Sweeney said in a press conference yesterday, Marco Sturm had a lot to do with Arvidsson coming to the Boston Bruins. He has had great seasons before. I talked about it in a previous video. He's been able to score goals. If the Bruins can get 15-plus goals out of him in your top six, I'm happy with it. And it looks like he probably will be in the top six. But Don Sweeney did say in a press conference yesterday, he's going to give the kids, and I'm assuming he's talking about Lysell, Patra, Merkulov, the best chance. Now, it's interesting he said that because does he give them the best chance? Last season, we saw the likes of Lysell and all those guys during the preseason play bottom six roles. That's not what they are. If Lysell, Merkulov, or even Patra for that matter, make the Boston Bruins, or they're not going to make the Boston Bruins, they're top six players. That's all they are. They're offensive upside. I don't see anything else coming out of these guys. And if you don't think they're going to make the Bruins, it's, trade them. Like, move on from them. Figure it out. Move the pick. Move the player. Do whatever you got to do. But just move on. Stop playing this game and saying that you're going to give guys opportunity and go out and sign a plethora of bottom six guys that are playing the right way and are going to take their role no matter what. It's very hard for these kids to come in and inject speed into the lineup and inject some skill in the lineup if you're just going to be putting in guys that you want to, as Don Sweeney said so eloquently in the press conference yesterday, bring the juice.
And during the the free agency time frame that we were under. And then we went to work on finding, as I referenced, last week, that we were going to put together a competitive team with bringing some juice back in here, and that applies to bringing our, the elevating our current guys and them feeling reinvigorated coming off of some injuries and a very down year. And, just the responses I've had from those guys and realizing how excited some of these guys are to get here. And maybe it is from the bottom up, but the juice is coming and we expect to be a much more competitive team.
I think Arvidsson, their plan for him is to be in the top six. Marco Sturm has a lot of faith in him. Arvidsson has a lot of faith in Marco Sturm, so I think this could work. Like I said, if you get 15-plus goals out of the guy, it's a one-year deal. You could trade him at the end of the year if you're not in a playoff spot. It's fine. He's going to get a lot more ice time playing in Boston than he did in Edmonton. So he's going to look a little bit more attractive, so you probably can move him if you're not in a playoff spot. Still think with the Bruins lineup the way it is, they will be fighting for a wild card spot. They're not going to be in the top 3 in their division. They'll be fighting with either the Montreal Canadiens or if, say, Tampa, Florida, or Toronto doesn't play as well next year and they're down there, but the Boston Bruins are fighting for a playoff spot next year, the wild card. But you got a lot of teams out in the East, they got a lot better. And I'm not talking about free agency. I'm talking about through trades or other transactions that they've made over the offseason. That's how they got better, because I don't see any team in the NHL besides maybe the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who acquired Marner, but that was a sign and trade, got that much better because of the UFA, the free agency period. I think Anaheim's going to be a better team next year. They've done a lot of moves over this offseason, but they've also done a lot of moves. They only made the one key free agent signing. So Arvidsson, I have no issue with. At $4 million, when you have that much cap space to begin with, it is what it is at this point. You need someone injected into that top 6, and he's a low cost on an expiring deal. If you hit lightning in a bottle on this kid, this is amazing. I call him a kid, but that's just because I'm a lot older. But I think Arvidsson has speed. He's shoot-first mentality. The coach trusts him. It's easy for him to get into the system and play better for us. I'm not saying it's the most amazing thing and he's going to be unbelievable. I'm just saying I have zero issue with this. He is literally what they've been talking about. Next guy I want to talk about is they signed Sean Kuraly yesterday. Again, I don't really have an issue with this one either. I think it has a lot to do with bias and has to do with me knowing the player and knowing everything about him. And I also know that when he left in, 2020-21, at the end of the season, the Bruins didn't want to lose him. They just didn't want to overpay for him. And Columbus, I think, overpaid for him at the time. And if you look at his first year in Columbus, in 77 games, he got 14 goals, 16 assists for 30 points. He didn't, in 82 games last year, though, he only got 6 goals and 11 assists for 17 points. This is not that big of a deal, this contract at all. I have zero issue with Sean Kuraly. He's coming in at $1.8 million per season for the next 2 years. He's got leadership. I don't think he's going to care whether he's in and out of the lineup, because that's probably what's going to happen. I think he's definitely going to be in the bottom 6, with Kastelik and Johnny Beecher and all those guys rotating in that bottom line, because we've got a ton of those guys that are going to be rotating in and out of those bottom 6. But I think Kuraly, knowing players on the team already, everything helps bringing him in. It's a lot easier to bring this guy in and add some leadership into the dressing room. And Columbus, everything that they said about him after he left is just the leadership. And I know that when he was here previously, he was a guy in the locker room that everybody seemed to like. And that does do something for you when your team is rebuilding and you're going to have, hopefully, a lot of young guys in the room. We'll see what happens. But at $1.8 million, Kuraly is whatever. It's not that big of a deal. That I have zero issue with. It's not that I have issues with the other contracts. It's just some of them are head scratchers. This one, I get it. It's easier on what you know than what you don't know. And that brings me back to Tanner Jeannot, because I just mentioned it's interesting what you know and what you don't know. You had Trent Frederick. You traded Trent Frederick at pennies on the dollar. You traded him to the Edmonton Oilers last year for pennies on the dollar. A couple picks. Let's be honest here. Not much did you get back for Trent Frederick. He wasn't good last season, but he scored 20 goals, or close to it, sorry. He hasn't scored 20 goals. Close to having 20 goals in a season more often than not. Tanner Jeannot? Yes. He has scored definitely over 20 goals in a season, like 5 years ago. Tanner Jeannot, you now just signed for 5 years. Yes, the cap hit isn't that big. It really isn't. $3.4 million over a couple years, but at 28 years old, I don't know. Don Sweeney, as I showed you in the clip before, said he needs guys to bring the juice. And he also mentioned Tanner Jeannot was brought in for the young guys that are coming down the line. Like he alluded to James Higgins, that's why Tanner Jeannot is in the lineup. Well, I got some stats for you here. Everybody says the Boston Bruins need to be tougher. And that's something as Bruins fans, I guess we pride ourselves on. We need to be tougher. We need to be tougher. Well, guess what? The Boston Bruins had the second most fights in the NHL last year. Guess what? 28th in goals scored. Why did the Boston Bruins lose games last year? It wasn't because they weren't tough. They were already tough. One of the toughest teams in the NHL. It's mind-boggling, actually, the whole, the Bruins need to be tougher. And even Sweeney, again, I love using the term, need to bring the juice. Mark Kastelik got more fights than Tanner Jeannot last year. And I'm going to say this right now. Mark Kastelik is tougher than Tanner Jeannot and adds more to the lineup. He at least wins faceoffs. He at least plays hard in the corner. I haven't seen Jeannot in the lineup, but Kastelik can at least score goals every now and then. I don't get it. I think that's my issue with this, because all it does is tell me that they just didn't learn. Last year, they went out and they got all these guys, Riley Tufte, for some reason, who they re-signed, Max Jones, all these guys. They brought these guys in to be tough, be harder to play against, play the right way. Bring the juice, as Don Sweeney loves to say now. It did nothing. In the playoffs against the Florida Panthers, your captain gets concussed, and Patrick Maroon was useless. Absolutely useless. Because the Florida Panthers don't want to fight you. If you're playing these teams that play tough like that, they don't want to fight you. Florida Panthers don't get in fights. They don't really do that. They go out there and they're rats. And that's why they got Brad Marchand. But you can't play that way if you just think you're going to fight people. Fun stat for you. The most fights in the NHL last year, Nashville Predators with 37. Did not make the playoffs. Absolutely terrible. Top 10 pick in the draft. Second in fights, the Boston Bruins. 30 fights. Didn't have a great season. Top 10 in the draft. Third, Utah Hockey Club, or the Utah Mammoth. 30 fights. Again, top 10 pick. But, they're bringing the juice. They're tough. San Jose Sharks were fourth with 25 fights. Hey, didn't they pick in the top 5? I just went through the first 4 teams leading the league in fights, leading the league in toughness, as we would like to call it. And guess what? None of them made the playoffs. Fighting doesn't win you hockey games anymore. You have St. Louis coming in next. They at least made the playoffs. You got Calgary, Columbus, Buffalo. We all know the Buffalo Sabres. The Minnesota Wild, which oddly enough, in a press conference, Don Sweeney alluded to, wants to play more like the Minnesota Wild or the Los Angeles Kings. 2 teams that got knocked out in the first round. Why do you want to play like them? I don't understand. It made me sound like, to me, Don Sweeney, all he cared about is just making the playoffs, not winning a Stanley Cup or building a team to win a Stanley Cup. He just cares about making the playoffs, and it sounds like that's literally how he's going to keep his job. He either makes the playoffs, doesn't, he's fired. That's what I think, because all he cared about is making the playoffs. And then after the Minnesota Wild, you got the Chicago Blackhawks at 20 fights. We all know how much they suck. So again, I'm not saying being tough doesn't matter. I love guys that are hard in the quarters, hard on forecheck, hard to play against, be a little rat out there every now and then, get in people's face, cause havoc. But fighting does nothing. Absolutely nothing. He said Tanner Jeannot makes these guys feel a little bit taller. Doesn't Mark Kastelik do that? You used to say that about Trent Frederick, who he doesn't make anybody look tough. But Kastelik, I thought, already made you feel a little bit taller. Every guy had, and you already got Zadorov as well. You have Kastelik, Zadorov, and Jeannot now. Yes, look, it's great. You can punch people in the face a bunch of times. But that's my issue with Tanner Jeannot. You need offense. If he doesn't add it, what's the point? You're not going out of there and scaring teams. It's just not happening anymore. That's just not the way the NHL works. Show me a different stat that shows me that if you go out and fight, that you're going to win the Stanley Cup or you're going to have a successful franchise, because those stats don't exist anymore. I had someone in my comments talking about, that Gretzky had Dave Semenko. That was in the 80s. The 80s. Well, what are we talking about here? You can disagree with me. I'd love to hear it in the comments, because this whole Tanner Jeannot thing, yes, the contract isn't that high of an AAV, but 5 years, come on. Like, the guy can't score goals. Ty Anderson said it so eloquently. That's great. You're going to go out and fight, but you're still losing 5-2. Well, what does it matter? Your job is to win hockey games. It's not to see how many people you can beat up, because that doesn't do anything. Those days of being the big bad Bruins, you can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. The Florida Panthers don't go out there and, beat people up. They go out there and they're hard on the forecheck and they piss people off and they get people off their game. All fighting does is put you in the box. You can't score in the box. Unless you can somehow punch a puck in the net. Wait a second, you can't do that. So that's my issue with Tanner Jeannot. They were like, he's a locker room guy. So is Sean Kuraly. So is David Pastrnak. So is Charlie Mack. You already had locker room guys. You just traded away the whole leadership core. And then some people said, Marco Sturm brought him in. I'm sure Marco Sturm was asked, hey, you had him there. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. But this was Cam Neely. Cam Neely thinks they need to be tough. They already were tough. That's my point. They were already tough. It didn't do anything last year. They got the doors blown off them. They need to be better on the forecheck, better defensively. They need to move the puck up, and they need to score goals. That's how you're winning a hockey game, not punching people in the face. Another guy they signed is Alex Steeves. 6 foot, 202 pounds. He's 25 years old. He's a bottom 6 guy. He's going to be playing in Providence next year. In 7 games last year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He got 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Big guy. Shoots left. I don't know this one. This was just, he plays center. He's just a guy to go down and play in Providence. If he ends up playing with the Boston Bruins, I could stand corrected, but I don't think this is much of anything. This is not hurting you. This isn't anything. It's not that big of a deal, but he's definitely playing in Providence. Here's the one that intrigues me, because I'm not going to spend an hour talking about Alex Steeves. Matej Blumel, right winger, was top in scoring in the AHL last year in the Dallas farm team, and he came to the Boston Bruins and I quote, because David Pastrnak called him, which was one of the things that swayed him going the other way, and that he wanted to go to a rebuilding team. We've been all saying they're retooling. Well, he used the words rebuild when he was interviewed why he came to the Boston Bruins. In 7 games last year, he got 1 goal, 0 assists for 1 point. But his AHL stats, okay? In 67 games last year, he got 39 goals, 33 assists for 72 points. Kid's got speed. Everybody's going to knock him on his height. He's only 6 foot, shoots left. Even though we need help on the right. He's 25 years old, though, but the kid can score. He's got offensive potential. It was interesting. Everybody was putting out their lineups yesterday, and they kept leaving him off. For me, I think this is the dark horse to make this hockey club. I think this is the guy that they actually might have saved their day. As much as I was like, hey, they went out and they got a bunch of fourth liners, they got a bunch of grinders. This guy could be the steal of the free agent period. I think this guy could be the guy. This is what I'm hoping, at least. I guess it's like I'm trying to find a silver lining from what happened yesterday. It's not like doom and gloom because I didn't think the Boston Bruins, like I said before, were going to be a Stanley Cup contender next year. They're a wild card contender. So if they don't make the playoffs, gives us a better chance of getting Gavin McKinnon. But I think Blumel, I think this is the kid. This is the kid to watch. 39 goals in the AHL in 67 games is nothing to shake a stick at. The kid can score. That's what he is. He's a goal scorer. I'm all in on this kid. And if he's friends with David Pastrnak, that's a win. He plays right, shoots left. Maybe he's the guy we want Fabian Lysell to be. Maybe Dallas screwed up by letting this kid go. He was drafted by the Oilers in the 4th round, 100th overall in 2019, and then he gets traded to Dallas. Plays there for a little bit, but Dallas really, they had no room in their lineup to let him play. If you look at the Dallas Stars lineup, where was this kid playing last year? He's a top 6 kid. He isn't playing in their bottom 6, and he's definitely not playing in their top 6. The Boston Bruins might have made a steal with this guy. This is the guy I'm hoping. Next on that list, Jordan Harris. Hey, the Boston Bruins went out and got a hometown boy. I know. Everybody's shocked. A left shot defenseman at 5'11". Whatever. Hey, he's good defensively. He's very good defensively. As a 7 defenseman, he could be it. He got 33 career games last year, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. Maybe there's an offensive upside. He was a 71st overall pick by the Montreal Canadiens in 2018, But Hayer Hill, Massachusetts. I know it shocks you when the Boston Bruins bring in kids like this. We'll see. He's a 7th defenseman. It's not that big of a deal. This is a nothing. This is not that big of a deal. He was a Hockey East 2nd team All-Star in 2021. Whatever. It's nothing to get excited about. It's not like he's going to be playing top 6 minutes for the Boston Bruins on our decor. I wish he was a right shot. Let's be honest here. I would have maybe been a little bit more excited. But if you know more about this kid, and I'm sure if you're from the Boston area, his best friend is probably in the chat. Just drop it down. Let me know about this kid. From my understanding, defensively, he's fantastic, and hopefully he turns out to be something. He could be a Boston Bruin years from now, and they'll get a chance. Sweeney continued to say in the press conference yesterday he's going to give everybody a chance to make this team. I find it hard when you bring in a lot of vets that can play the right way, is what he said. It's hard to beat out those guys in the lineup. Next on the list, Michael Eyssimont. Center, as Don Sweeney said, he's a pain in the butt to play against, and that's why he got him. I'm hoping he's right. In 77 games, he got 9 goals, 7 assists, and 16 points. That's not bad. He played for the Kraken and Tampa Bay Lightning last year. 4 goals in the Kraken in 20 games. I have 0 issues with this one as well. I think he can be decent. He's going to be in the bottom 6 because in a little knock on him, he's 6 foot, 191 pounds, shoots left. Again, don't know what it is. In the draft, they got a bunch of guys that shoot left. We know they need help on the right-hand side, and they got a bunch of guys that shoot left. But this guy's an energy guy, plays in the bottom 6, and he's got a ton of speed. I have 0 issue with this one as well. The Bruins need speed. They need offense. Marco Sturm is a shoot coach. He wants people to generate a lot of shots, and hopefully they generate offense from that. From all intents and purposes, my understanding on this kid, he plays the right way. He does everything that Don Sweeney continued to talk about. Not a lot of people have him. They have him as like the extra forward on the team next year. I'm hoping he actually makes the lineup. I don't know where that fits. Later on, I'm going to try and do a whole roster and see what happens here. But hopefully he is something. Because right now, we got a whole lot of nothing. Again, you weren't changing this hockey club in the signings yesterday. But after going through these signings myself, I was less like, oh my God, they got a bunch of bottom 6 guys, which they did. But they got guys where they're taking a flyer on. And they got two guys in Eyssimont that I'm talking about and Blumel that I think could add some offensive sparks if they're allowed to open up. I think Blumel is the long shot and the one that I hope, but I also hope guys like Patra, Lysell, and all those guys get an actual shot. I saw people saying that they've gotten shots and they're already busts. They're not busts. But if they don't work out this year, you need to move on from them. You need to trade them. Stop trying to drag them along. Try and get assets back for these guys. If other teams think that they can change them or get something more, because the Boston Bruins do this all the time. We always bring in former first-round picks to see if we can get something out of them. Move them. Maybe you can trade them to another team that has a like player that just can't fit their system. Bring him in. The Bruins have a ton of holes up in that top six. If Lysell doesn't make it out of camp, he isn't making this hockey club. It is what it is. I think Merkulov, I think they just gave him a qualifying offer just so they don't lose him as an asset. I think they definitely would trade him if they could. I also don't think the Boston Bruins are done. I don't think what we saw yesterday, and we all could get mad. I'm only harping on the Tanner Jeannot thing because that term is just ridiculous at 5 years. It just doesn't make any sense. And in fact, if you go along and look everywhere besides Andrew Raycroft, everybody is harping on this deal. No one understands it. Jeff Merrick is like the biggest Tanner Jeannot fan in the world, and he doesn't even understand why he got 5 years. I jokingly said yesterday, who were they going up against? Who did they actually negotiate against themselves? Who like that agent for Tanner Jeannot? He deserves the biggest raise. He just got you five years. Whatever. He's not going to do much, but the Bruins need offense. So hopefully, out of all these guys they got, someone can generate some offense. Kuraly's not going to generate you offense, but he's also not going to hurt you when he's on the ice. Again, I hope Blumel can. Maybe this is, we're all going to come back and go right back to where the draft was when we thought Don Sweeney was actually changing things. But when Don Sweeney said in that press conference that he wanted to be like the Minnesota Wild or the Los Angeles Kings, it dawned on me. He just cares about making the playoffs this year. Doesn't care about winning the Stanley Cup. Doesn't care about winning the Stanley Cup in the future. He cares about making the playoffs this year because his job's on the line. And I get it. If my job was on the line, I'd be the exact same. We're going to have a different coach. We're going to see a different attitude. We're going to see a different team. Until these guys hit the ice, everything I'm saying now doesn't really even matter. It doesn't. I'll be the first to admit it. I could be totally wrong. I could look terrible. I had people in the comments saying, whatever Jeannot gets 20 goals. Then I will do a video saying I was wrong and I am so happy about this. Because in the end of the day, I just want the Boston Bruins to be successful. We got a bright future with some of the kids they picked up in the draft. Development camp looks like it's going great. But again, these kids are playing against like peers. They're not playing against NHL talent. We definitely need Swayman to have a better year. And that also brings me to the last thing I wanted to chat about. It sounds like Korpisalo isn't going anywhere, which is hilarious. Ty Anderson asked straight up the question to Don Sweeney, and Sweeney said that he's going to have the goalies all fight. So you now are potentially going to put one of them on waivers. He said if Korpisalo doesn't make the team because DiPietro has a phenomenal training camp, then he's going to have that tough conversation. So that tells me that they're going to go in with all three of them, and then one of them is going to get put on waivers and then hopefully not claimed, but odds are they're going to get claimed. Korpisalo is not a hard contract to move. At a $3 million cap hit, it's not hard at all. So it can happen. I still think it needs to because I don't understand where he fits in with this hockey club. The Boston Bruins need to start showing kids that they can make this roster, not telling them they can make this roster. If you show no kids actually making the roster and anybody's actually moving up from Providence, where's your motivation? I know people say you should be motivated enough to make the NHL, but if you try, and you don't get to play in the NHL, what's the difference? The Boston Bruins are a bunch of lunch pail kids, which is fine. It's fine. But you can't spend the whole year relying on David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie to lift you up and score goals to make this team win. Otherwise, you're going to be losing a lot of 5-2 games. We're going to see a lot of people next year blaming the goaltending again when you've got no one to move the puck up the ice. If the puck's in your zone the whole time, eventually it's going to go in the net. You can forecheck, you can fight, you can be tough, you can do whatever you want. But if the puck's in your zone the whole time, it's going in. You know, they brought in Steve Spott to make this power play better. I hope so. And I think guys like Blumel, like you can see little spots, like these guys all came from their former teams. Hey, I'm here for it. Show me. Prove me wrong, Don Sweeney. Prove me wrong. I would love to be wrong about everything I've seen here. And I think I pretty much, if I go through this whole thing, it's really just the Tanner Jeannot contract that really bothers me. The other ones, they're nothing. I think if Tanner Jeannot isn't signed yesterday, the internet isn't as mad. We're not the laughing stock. Steve Dangle podcast makes fun of the Boston Bruins like 3 or 4 times. NHL Network makes fun of the Boston Bruins about this. It seemed to be the laughing stock of free agent period yesterday because I think it also was one of the first signings. So gave them something to talk about before all these signings started to come through. And it was also one of the first signings. Was the Boston Bruins talking to him before? Because that does happen. I don't care about this tampering thing. Like, that happens. But, geez, they signed him real quick. Hey, it seemed to be their target. It seemed to be the guy they wanted. Don Sweeney, prove us right. We're going to have 2 guys in Kastelik and Jeannot that are probably going to play on the same line that are going to be unbelievably tough. You're going to have your 4th line just go out there and, I guess, scare people. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Or they'll just have stage fights over all the time when they're already losing and it won't really matter and hopefully build the team up. Hey, I'm hoping Jeannot is a great locker room guy. We already know Kuraly is. It's not all doom and gloom. We still got a good, decent top 6. I think Arvidsson, I'm going to give him a chance. I can't harp on him until he plays. There's just no point. None of these guys. Jeannot is just that term. I want to hear from you, though. Do you think it's all doom and gloom from what happened yesterday? Did you have aspirations that this team was going to be a Stanley Cup contender? I sure didn't, but I need to know from you. Drop those comments down below. That's a wrap on today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If news breaks surrounding the Boston Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you, and I'll see you next time.